Hey guys, Hey guys, time for a reading vlog, and this is going to be a spoiler-filled reading vlog for Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. So this is a reread for me. I have already read this book. I think I read it for the first time in 2020, maybe 2019. Not entirely sure, but in any case, it hit 2020. It was quite recent in that sense, so it's going to be interesting rereading it so soon. But so in 2021, I want to reread a lot of the Cosmere and read some of it for the first time, mainly Mistborn Era 2, which I have yet to dive into. So this month I'm reading Warbreaker. I've definitely been enjoying my reread for Elantris. I will link that vlog down below. I did a spoiler-free one for Elantris, but I think I want to do a spoiler-filled one for this one because it'll be a little bit more fun. But so yeah, diving into it. So because this is a spoiler-filled review, I won't give lots of information about the plot because I feel like if you're watching this, you have read Warbreaker. But so basically we're looking at these two sisters. One is destined to marry the God King, but at the last minute, her sister actually takes her place, and so she goes to this new kingdom and is exposed to a society that she has no real information about, to a political system that she hasn't been prepared for, and her sister travels after her in order to try and help her try and save her. It is a world with a super interesting magic system. It has a magic system that is based on the idea of breaths. So everybody has one breath, and your breath can be used to animate things, but you can also give your breath to somebody else. It's not essential for you to be able to survive. However, your existence will become a little bit more duller if you do give up your breath. And so certain individuals have kind of gathered this huge stock of breath that they can use in order to perform magic with, and that is one of the things that I really love most about it. I think it's a super interesting magic concept of that sort of like magical spark that each and every one of us has, but to a very limited degree. And then if you accumulate more of those, that you can get the usage that you can get out of it, but also the sort of like interesting way in which they store breaths, or in which they kind of use their breath as a sort of storage system, and sometimes put part of that storage somewhere else and then reclaim that. So I definitely like a lot of the implications with the magic system here. So I've just read the prologue yesterday, so I reread that whole first opening sequence, and I think this is probably one of my favorite prologues in Brandon Sanderson's books that I've read, because I love that opening the same as I love the sort of like opening to Way of Kings. Because I think Warbreaker and Way of Kings in that sense are kind of similar, in the sense that the magic system at first we don't see too much of, except for in that prologue. So in Warbreaker we do get more magic usage throughout, but we do still get quite a limited usage of the magic system at the beginning of this book. But so this prologue is a very good way of introducing us to the magic system and its potential, and keeping us intrigued for seeing repeats of that magic system later on within the book. But so yeah, going to be diving further into Warbreaker right now, and so check in with you guys later. Alright, reread the first 4 chapters, and I gotta say, Sirius' father is an asshole. I knew it was an asshole, of course, because he decides to send his least favorite daughter to the kingdom of Halandrim because he knows that a war is impending and that nothing can be done to stop it. That basically he's sending his daughter just to stall the war effort, and so he's sending his least favorite daughter. So he's already an asshole for that, of course. But rereading it now, in Sirius' perspective, it is clear that he also didn't really talk to her about what is expected of her. So clearly he's just sending her there to die. But even if he was just making that decision to just send her there, like giving her nothing, no explanation of like what she could possibly do there, at least like spin some sort of tale of, what she could do to help them, how she could help prevent a war. Because even when you are a complete pessimist and think that war is inevitable, at the very least you can still harbor the hope that your daughter can prevent this. But clearly he didn't talk to her at all, because she has no idea why he chose her. She has no idea what is expected of her, of what she can be doing. So dick move. And there's also some interesting conversations that I know that happened, but that I want to kind of talk about now, about how Siri is really just expected to perform, because this like one of the this is what one of the guards, I think, is, no, it's a priest, was one of what like the high priest is telling to her when she kind of wants to have a sort of more romantic moment with the God King. So he just says, like, the God King does not perform for your whims, woman. You are blessed above all others, for you will be allowed to touch him, if only at his discretion. Do not pretend that you are anything other than you are. You have come because he desires it, and you will obey. Otherwise, you will be put aside, and another will be chosen in your place, which I think might bode unfavorably for your rebel friends in the Highlands. So from the get-go, it's very clear to her that even though she has been chosen for this, even though they've waited years and years for Vivenna to come of age, for this treaty to be there, that she is not in power here. She needs to obey, or otherwise they will just get rid of her. So interesting. But so yeah, going through it a little bit slower than expected, I guess, but I definitely do want to take my time with it and get as much out of it as possible. And this is the final book of my TBR that I need to finish. I finished all of the rest, so I still have over a week to finish it, so should be more than doable at this point in time. So it's Sunday evening time for another update on Warbreaker. I actually didn't read anything in Warbreaker today, but so I did get to like page 115 or something like that yesterday. But so I think it's just interesting to look at like the way in which the story develops with Vivenna and Ciri. So we do have these sort of like two very contrasting characters. Vivenna, the sort of serious sister who is very conscientious and who very much is a dutiful daughter, and then Ciri has always been kind of the leftover daughter who's been left to her own devices, and so has developed a lot more of a free spirit, is very much somebody who is a little bit more on the wild side, in the sense that she doesn't really have a lot of restrictions placed on her, and so she's also not really caring all that much about making a good impression and things like that. And so we then have this sort of like carefree sister pushed into a constricted role, into a situation in which she cannot go and do whatever she wants, in which she has to conform to society, and to a society that she doesn't even really know the rules and traditions of. And then you have Vivenna, who has always been this dutiful, rule-abiding daughter, who is now kind of stepping outside of that role, disobeying her father by going after Ciri, and then having this whole new world open up to her, and having to find out and being left to her own devices for once. So I think it's a very interesting and very nice thing that Brandon Sanderson has done there, and it also opens them up for like the biggest amount of possible character growth. I will definitely say that once again at the beginning of this book, I dislike Vivenna very much, but I know that I will grow to love her throughout, because that's what I did upon my first read. And upon my first read, I definitely loved Ciri a lot at the beginning, and was like kind of like, okay, Ciri's my favorite sister. But Vivenna definitely grew a whole lot on me throughout the book. And Ciri, I definitely think, like, I still liked her, but I was kind of hoping for more with her character, so it'll be interesting to go into that now. I did definitely also like, there were some passages here, because in my memory of, Vivenna going after Ciri in order to save her, in my memory, the main focus of Vivenna was kind of because she felt wronged, in the sense that she had this duty that she'd been preparing for all her life, and she felt like that had been taken away from her, and suddenly she was useless, and so she kind of felt wounded in her pride, I guess, and that she was mainly going back just because she felt like she had to protect Ciri, because she felt like Ciri could by no means take care of herself. but not in a sort of loving way, more in a sort of way of proving everybody right about the fact that Vivenna was the right sister to send all along. However, upon rereading, definitely at least in this passage, there is some very nice commentary that Vivenna gives when she's like thinking back of her sister and thinking about, you know, all the things that she very much appreciates about her sister, that I definitely think I kind of either read over or it doesn't really come back later in the book, how much she really felt, how much she really loved to sort of like the calming presence or the sort of like warming presence of her sister. And so it is nice to see those kind of sisterly moments, especially since we don't really get to see Ciri and Vivenna interact throughout this book. So there's so it's easy to kind of overlook the fact that they're each other's sisters, because they only just basically talk about each other from time to time in telling like how would his sister do it or how was she prepared for this. But it's nice to have these small moments interlaced of them kind of thinking back on each other and on, you know, memories that they've had together, because that would have, I think we missed that a little bit more and in the book. It's nice that I saw it here now, but I don't think it's there for the remainder of the book, and that could have kind of solidified that sisterly bond that I kind of feel is a little bit lacking within the book, or at least which isn't like put at the focus of this book. Hello, very odd lighting angle apparently. So I wanted to give you guys an update. It is Wednesday evening. I am making very slow progress through Warbreaker. By the way, my hair is a total mess. I really need to wash it clearly because it's kind of gotten extremely frizzy. But so, back to Warbreaker content. I just wanted to comment on the relationship between Larimar and Light Song, which I think is so amazing. I really love. That's like the best dynamic in the whole book. Kind of makes me think now of like, maybe I shouldn't go into that because that's like from a different. It makes me think of a beloved friendship in Stormlight Archive, for example. But so I'm mainly thinking about it now in relationship to this chapter, though it's definitely there in the series in the book as a whole. But so I like this quote from Larimar, which is, "It's no deception. It's not so uncommon for others to have more faith in someone than he has in himself." Beautiful quote. And then I also like this sort of like exchange that they have in that same chapter, in which it kind of like Lightning is kind of like trying to say that he does, that his actions could have a negative effect, so it might be better to just take no action at all. To which Larimer then answered, "Perhaps, like it or not, you are a part of the workings of this kingdom, and you produce effects even if you stay in bed. If you do nothing, then the problems are as much your fault as if you had instigated them." "No," Lightsong said. "No, I think you're wrong. If I don't do anything, then at least I can't ruin things. Sure, I can let them go wrong, but that's not the same thing. It really isn't, no matter what people say. And if, by acting, you could make things better?" Lightsong shook his head. "Not going to happen. You know me better than that." "I do, Your Grace. I know you better perhaps than you think I do. You've always been one of the best men I have known." So I just love that exchange between the two of them, and I love the way in which, Larimar definitely sees something way better in Lightsong than what Lightsong sees in himself, and the way in which he's kind of bringing out the best of Lightsong when Lightsong himself is kind of like making light of his situation, making light of his role. Larimar kind of like never buys into that. He never allows for that to be the extent of what Lightsong is. Larimar always believes in Lightsong as somebody much bigger, as somebody with a lot more to him than what he is presenting to the world. So love that friendship, and definitely dying for more of it throughout the remainder of the book. Alright, just got to a passage that I find very interesting that I just wanted to discuss. It's one of those examples of why I consider Vivenna a very annoying character at the beginning, because she is very much self-absorbed in the sense that she thinks that she knows what's best. She thinks that she has everything in the right, and so luckily she will be proven wrong quite a bit throughout this book, and that will definitely lead to some character growth. But at this point in time, she's still that sort of like, I know everything best type of character. And so this is a kind of like religious discussion we have here between a character of Jules, who's basically given away her breath, and Vivenna herself. So Vivenna shook her head, turning away. That's why we get annoyed by you, Adrians. So high, so certain that what you do is right. If your god asked you to give up your breath, or even the breath of your child, wouldn't you do it? You give up your children to become monks, forcing them into a life of servitude, don't you? That's seen as a sign of faith. Yet when we do something to serve our gods, you twist your lips at us and call us blasphemers. Vivenna opened her mouth, but could come up with no response. Sending children away to become monks was different. And so I very much like the sort of like ending statement in this passage by Jules. You don't have to believe in my miracles. You can call them accidents or coincidences if you must, but don't pity me for my fate, and don't presume that you're better just because you believe something different. Vivenna closed her mouth. Obviously, there was no point in arguing. Jules was in no mood for her sympathy. Vivenna retreated back up the stairs. So I think I love that passage by Jules. I think it's definitely my opinion about religion. So I am atheist, agnostic maybe, but probably more like atheist. And so, but I definitely do have been raised Catholic, and I have had doubts and possibly believed at some point in time. But I definitely always have felt like as long as you don't enforce your views on other people's, that's the most important thing. And so that is basically what Jules is saying here, that, we shouldn't, that it's fine if we don't believe the same thing, just as long as we respect what other people's opinion or beliefs are, and as we don't really talk down to them about their beliefs, or even look down upon them for their beliefs. And Vivenna's response to that being like, yeah, clearly she's in no mood for me to show me my sympathy at the moment, clearly indicates that she doesn't get that point, that is not coming across, that she just feels like, apparently I vexed her a little bit and she's in no mood. She's just being her usual cranky self, whereas she's raising valid concerns about the way in which Vivenna is responding to her and to her beliefs, or the way that she has practiced her faith. And so I very much like that. I always like that, also knowing how religious of a writer, of a person, Brandon Sanderson himself is, because oftentimes I feel that something that puts me off of certain writing is when I can feel it being too religious in nature, and when I can kind of feel the author's voice through that religious content. Whereas here I often feel like Brandon Sanderson's message is definitely one of reconciliation between people of different faiths, or people of faith and people who don't have faith, which is definitely something that I appreciate a lot. So moving forward on with my reading, it is Thursday now. So tomorrow is Friday. Normally I don't read on Friday. I think I'm probably going to make an exception tomorrow, but I will still first do like my Friday movie night sort of deal. So I will just put on a movie first, and then I will still read afterwards, because I do still want to finish this book this month, but I still have so much more to go. I'm not even halfway through the book at this point in time. So, and I also don't want to really pressure myself neither. So I want to finish it on the one hand. On the other hand, I'm like, don't pressure yourself into reading so much. The idea behind this year was that I wasn't going to put too much pressure on myself to be constantly reading. So I'm kind of falling back into that trap from time to time. And so other times I'm just like, no, just keep on going. So we'll see where I end up getting to. I definitely don't want to be pressuring myself too much neither, but I do still want to kind of see if I can get a little bit more reading done tomorrow as well, so as not to have too much left within this weekend, in order to potentially still be able to finish this book this week. But so yeah, I am now at like page 280 of 650, if that gives you an idea of how much I am behind on schedule. But so we'll see what ends up happening with that. Hey, so it is Saturday morning, last 2 days of the month of February. I'm still kind of trying to finish Warbreaker. I'm just under the 400 page mark, meaning I have some 250 pages to go yet. So it's doable, but not at the pace that I've been going the last week and a half or something. But of course, most of my reading has basically actually happened during work days. And I haven't really been putting a lot of reading time in the weekends in for this book so far, so who knows. But as I said previously in this vlog, I'm not going to push myself to finish it, but Warbreaker, let's talk because something's happened and I'm kind of like it's early in the morning and I'm like, what did I read yesterday? What made me think that I wanted yeah, I read the Horde chapter. So Horde made his appearance in Warbreaker just now. I've actually been kind of considering, like, I remembered the Horde chapter in Warbreaker, didn't notice Horde in Elantris the first time that I read Elantris. And then I don't know whether he pops up in Mistborn, so that'll be for next month when we find, or whichever of the books he might pop into, but that'll be for when I'm rereading Mistborn. But so, yeah, I just realized that I don't really know where he's in there, if he's in there. But so the Hoyt chapter in this one is Hoyt giving a whole explanation about the history of this world. I will say I kind of miss Hoyt's sassy personality in this one. Um, that we definitely get to see that side of Hoyt more in like Stormlight Archive, for example. So it's a very contained Hoyt within this book, which kind of makes sense because he is kind of a servant to gods within this chapter particularly. But yeah, I still kind of miss this sort of like more sassy side to him. He is using magic that is, I assume, coming from the White Sands graphic novel that Brandon Sanderson also wrote, which I totally still need to read because, you know, I've been intrigued about that all along. But I think in the State of the Sanderson that Brandon Sanderson publishes every year, he was kind of saying that there's going to be a bind up of the 3 graphic novels of White Sand coming out. So I'm actually kind of probably wait for that to come out before I dive into White Sands. But what did I want to say about the Hoy chapter? So I am about 400 pages in and we finally get Vivenna's kidnapping by Vasher. I believe it is around this point in time that I start to like Vivenna more, but could be that we still need to wait because I think she still first needs to realize that, because she kind of still first needs to realize that Vasher isn't the enemy, that the people that she's been trusting all along are actually the people who have been working against her. But yeah, I definitely still dislike Vivenna a whole lot. She has so many prejudices and she is so convinced with her view of the world, even when she's kind of, and like she very much has this sort of like savior complex, which is very annoying to read from, which is like a good quality, you know. I find it to be a good sign when a character can fully can fully annoy me or anger me. It's just that, so don't get me wrong, I don't need to like this character in order to like this book. But so I know that's my opinion on Vivenna is going to change. But up until now, I'm like, oh, Jesus. Now I remember why I dislike Vivenna so much. But so yeah, I am going to be reading a little bit of it now to already get a little bit of a head start today. Hopefully I can get some like 150 pages in today so that I have less to do tomorrow and then I'll probably be able to finish it. Hello, it is Saturday. Around lunchtime I am actually reading along with Jade, Steph, Becca, and Ashley on their reading sprints, and it's very nice because they're doing 1 hour reading sprints, which is way more than I usually read. Like I never have a full hour of reading nonstop. But so I did it earlier today. Now I'm actually only doing like a half hour because I did need to get some lunch in because I was super starving. But so I wanted to check in with you guys to comment on something regarding the gods. So we have just been introduced to All Mother, which is another god. And so I really loved, I'd really forgotten about her sort of like, not really presence within the book, but what made her stand out. I knew the sort of like plot twist that happened with her of her giving her lifeless commands to Light Song, but I'd forgotten that she is somebody who takes the godness like role a lot more seriously than some of the others, because all that we've been presented of the gods so far is the fact that the people go to see their gods and petition them for them to save them, and then they decide whether to do so or not, but they can only really save one person, and if they do, they give up their own life. So it seems like a pretty useful system so far. But then when we go to see All Mother, we are introduced with a way in which a god could also take that position, because All Mother, rather than just refusing a petition and turning people away, she will look for ways in which she can help them, ways in which she can improve these people's circumstances based on what they are petitioning her for. So just wanted to kind of comment on that I really liked. That development of looking at that way of looking at the gods, which is then kind of introduced within that chapter as being the way in which things were previously done, the way in which things should have always have been done. But so yeah, just wanted to comment very shortly on that. And then something that I've been meaning to talk about earlier as well is the development of Dent and Tongfa and the way in which they've been playing Vivenna. So I've been waiting for this moment to talk to you guys about it, I guess to kind of space out when I give updates for this book, because this is a spoiler vlog, so whoever's watching this already knows this normally. But I really love the way in which Brandon Sanderson has structured that. Definitely upon reread, it's very clear. It is just very nice to see how he has been playing us from the very beginning. I think I don't really remember whether I noticed the first time, whether I knew the first time around, whether I was like suspicious of them or not. But I think it's just so well done playing with our sort of like expectations of how a story goes, and so introducing these sort of thug-like characters and then having them be like very jovial, playful, humorous characters who are constantly laughing about the way that people have certain expectations about mercenaries, and them through their actions proving to be very different. However, in the end, it turns out that they were just using that as a way of making Vivenna think that they were harmless while they were actually playing her all along. So I really like that whole sort of a development. I really like those characters and the way in which that whole plot development got played. I think Brandon Sanderson did a wonderful job with that, and that makes it interesting upon reread as well. Even though you already know what is coming, it's still interesting to see how he's been playing, how he's been manipulating those sort of like sentences that they say, how they've been playing Vivenna. Vivenna has finally been taken down a notch, as I said in my previous update. I was waiting for this moment for her to finally realize that she isn't the big hotshot that she kind of considered herself to be. And I do actually really like that whole passage in which she's really down in the dumps, in which she is at her most desperate, and which she has to live in the slums, live like one of the poor people living there, and really is confronted with the life of the poor and the way that the poor live their life, and showcasing as well that some of the previous prejudices that she's had against people, for example against prostitutes, that her thinking on that, her reasoning on that is definitely changing, because even though she doesn't go down that line yet, it's clearly indicated that it is a not yet and not a case of I will never do that, which sometimes can bother me in fantasy when that's kind of introduced, like I will never go that route. So I think that this sequence was very nice to show that when you're at your most desperate, when you don't know what to do anymore, when there's really no hope anymore, people will do anything. People will do anything to survive, will do anything to get a little bit of food when they're extremely hungry, or get that extra measure of security for somebody they love, for example. So really like that sequence and the way that was handled also. So that was it for my update so far. I am going through it relatively quickly today. I am like at page 470 or something like that at this point in time. So my hope is still to get to like 550 today, but I am also going to be having a gymnastics watch party with a friend tonight, which wasn't scheduled. So like I thought I had the full day of reading ahead of me, and I probably won't. And so, as I have indicated in previous clips, I won't force myself to like finish it this weekend. So if that gymnastics meetup with a friend means that I don't finish it this weekend, then so be it. Hey everyone, it's Monday morning. I finished Warbreaker this morning right before work. So technically I finished it in March, but it was like 20 pages. I'm counting it for the month of February. But so yeah, I finished it. I have a couple of things that I want to talk about. So first up, there were some things about the ending that I did forget, or that I forgot them. I knew what happened, but not entirely anymore how it happened or how it all fit together. So I had kind of forgotten that whole like two dogs fight for a bone and the third one is the one that's running away with it type of structure to it. So I had forgotten that it was the Pan Kyle people who were actually responsible for that whole sort of rivalry and the stoking up of these sort of war propaganda at that point in time, which I definitely think was a nice plotline that was woven through there. I did like the sort of reunion between Vivenna and Syria, in which they're kind of both seeing how the image that they had of the other person has completely changed, how that person is completely acting against what they had thought that person was up until that point, which also just has to do with character development. For both of these characters, we've really seen them tackling things that are outside of their comfort zone. A lot of Vasher's backstory, I totally forgotten about the title Warbreaker, because somewhere within this book I was still thinking like, right, why was this book called Warbreaker again? And then the final page okay, right, yeah, I mean, it's a small detail in essence, because I don't think he'll ever I don't think it matters for anything except for the title of this book, but it is kind of funny to not have remembered that from the first read, because that would be the type of thing that you read and you're like, that's where the title comes from, and so that would stick with your mind, I would assume, but no, apparently not. In terms of Susebron, I am not happy with Susebron's storyline. I think I am happy with the story to some extent. I'm happy how it takes place, but I just don't like the fact that means that is just another typical representation for disability within fantasy. It's a typical story arc of a character who is disabled having to face the difficulties of something being limited in their functioning because of it. So in the case of Susebron, it is his communication. So he has been limited in his means of reaching out and connecting to others, and we have addressed that by teaching him to write. However, because of the whole plot schemes that are taking place, he is limited to communication with just one person. And then what I would have liked to see take place is, because it was hinted at, it was built up for it, it could have just as easily taken place, but it didn't. What I would have liked to see take place is that we would have figured out a way for Susebron to access his powers with his mind, so without using language, or maybe to find a written form to use it or something like that. But no, anything except for let's just heal him, and then he can finally use his magic and he can finally become this awesome character who has access to magical powers versus the sort of limited, disabled version he was before. So I think the book definitely built towards the idea that Lightsong was going to heal somebody, and that was always intended from the very beginning, that was always there. Those elements were always there and were always leading up to that sort of revelation. But I would have liked to see Lightsong heal anybody else and just have Susebron remain a great disabled character. So this isn't the first time that I have this problem with Brandon Sanderson, but it's just not with Brandon Sanderson alone. It's just one thing that I would like to see Brandon Sanderson tackle. And I do know that, Dawn Shard was a book in which he was tackling this physical disability representation a lot better. And so hopefully in his coming books he will also make a little bit more of a change there, but it's just not necessarily Stormlight because he's already set up that magical system, but I do definitely hope that he will take that into consideration in future magic systems, that he doesn't resort to this sort of like magic heals every sort of like physical wounds thing, because it is something that is done often within fantasy, and within normal literature it is often also seen as sort of the end story arc for a disabled character, to have a disabled character kind of be healed or for their problems to be solved. And storylines that don't center around that often actually center around the caregivers rather than they center around the disabled characters themselves. So that's just a sad thing coming from the perspective of somebody who is taking disability representation a lot more to heart now and is really looking towards, and I'm really zoning in on those things. And so as a result, of course, I'm also noticing this a lot more than your average reader will probably notice this. But so that's just, I would have liked to see it handled differently. I do like that in this case, it really is a sort of like, it's not an easy solution in the sense that it is one god giving up his life to restore another person to full capacity, rather than it being the case of like, okay, you can have like, and it's not the case that anybody could be healed within this world, you know, or that a big majority of the people within this world can be healed. In order for somebody in this world to be healed like that, another person needs to die. So there are consequences to this healing. It isn't just a sort of like Deus Ex Machina, where it isn't just a Deus Ex Machina that is all positive news. That's a little, so to that extent I do like it a little bit better. And I of course also loved it for the character of Lightsong, because I think that is a beautiful apotheosis to his story arc, but I don't think it needed to be Susebron who he healed. I think it could have been somebody else and we still would have gotten that beautiful story arc. I would have liked to have seen it be Larimar, for example, that he healed in that way. That for me would have felt really nice and really good parallel with his original death. But so, enough about that disability representation, because yeah, it is going to remain my complaint with Brandon Sanderson, it seems. I always revered Brandon Sanderson, but since I've been paying more attention to disability representation, and since I've been identifying as disabled myself a little bit more, it's also really felt like, yeah, that's the one thing that you could still that's really one of the things that you could really still improve upon. But he is improving in general upon things that he is writing, you know, his LGBTQIA plus representation. He is starting to include more of it when it comes to mental health, even compared to these earlier books where there is already snippets of mental health in there. I definitely think that in later, his more recent works, that has definitely been explored a whole lot more than he did in his earlier works. And so disability, hopefully physical disability, is also coming our way towards better representation in the future. Apart from that, do I have anything to discuss with this one? Yeah, I mean, I had forgotten that sort of like discussion of how he's now going to, of how there is still one of the original 5 scholars left, which is Your Steel. I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce it. I don't know whether I'm supposed to know who this person is or not. But apparently he is running amok somewhere within the Cosmere, I guess. And so I'm really actually starting to get excited for the sequel upon this reread, but it's still going to be so long until we get the sequel. But so in any case, I've really been enjoying rereading Warbreaker. I'm going to wrap this up here. I've enjoyed going back through the story. For this one, the majority of it I did really remember, but that also made it quite interesting to reread it and kind of see how Brandon Sanderson had set that up. And about certain plot points, you could now see like the foreshadowing, or you could reinterpret things that, you know, for example, the betrayal of certain characters, you could then reinterpret it. If you saw that those earlier scenes, you could really see how they weren't really being funny, how they were actually just telling the truth and just making it sound like a joke. And that would really make that reread quite fun. And yeah, I still very much love this book. And I think favorite character for in this book? Light Song and Nightblood, I guess. Those are my favorites. I hope you guys enjoyed this reading vlog. It was my first spoiler-filled one, I think. I don't think I've done a spoiler-filled reading vlog before, so it kind of felt weird being able to talk about spoilers, and I think for a lot of times I was still kind of being vague about some things, and then was like, I don't know, now I can talk about it. I will probably be doing spoiler-filled vlogs as well for like Mistborn Era 1, and that's possibly going to be more interesting. Maybe not the first one yet, but definitely the second and the third one, because I have a very bad memory, and so I don't fully remember those books, and so it'll be interesting diving back into them, having like vague knowledge of what takes place within the book, but not fully. So I hope you guys will tune in for those ones as well in the future. But so yeah, for now, hope you guys are enjoying your day. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and see you guys for a future one. Bye.